I don't know if I'm really prepared to be talking about this right now. This reminds me of the days when I had my dreams crushed of being a voice actor because of my vocal fry. What good times. Hello, welcome back to a new day, a new sleigh, and a new video where I have something to say. And today we are talking about the one, the only beloved sequel to Benjamin Alire Science's In 2012, author, poet, writer Benjamin Alire Science came out with one of the best books of the generation. That book was called Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. That book, which I actually have. Wait a fucking minute. Where's the book? Do I have a book thief on my hands? I can't find it. In the Water Wars video, I talked about how at my school when I was a freshman, we had a reading list and they had recommended a ton of books and I bought almost every book on the reading list. One of those was Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. I didn't end up reading that book until my freshman year of college. It was the first book that I read because I was commuting almost 2 hours to get to campus every day. So when I was on the train, I would read the book and that's when I really got back into reading, which was really great. But now, almost, 4 years later, okay. I fell in love with that book so much. It really shaped my experience, and it very quickly became one of my all-time favorite books, right? Okay. So in 2021, the author came out with the sequel of Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, titled Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, which is what I will be reviewing today. So I bought the book almost immediately once it came out, but I opened it and I was like, I'm not ready. I wasn't ready for, oh my God, why is my hair? Hold on, I need to fix this. So I was just not ready for what this book was going to end with, because obviously Aristotle and Dante, the first book, was not really meant to be like a series. It wasn't supposed to have a sequel. It was just supposed to be a standalone. But because it got so much praise, it was such a huge success, I feel like a lot of people pressured the author to find out what happened at the end of their story, which is why he came out with a sequel. I don't think this book was needed. I didn't feel like there's any loose ends that didn't get tied up from the first book, but I still think that it was incredibly an amazing experience to have this sequel. Let's get into it. Okay. So when I was reading this book, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna be totally transparent. I did not take a single note. I just listened to it, I absorbed it, because part of me was I just wanted to read it, selfishly. I didn't want to think about it from a content perspective. I just wanted to read it and enjoy it, to satisfy my inner child from when I read the first book. I just wanted to hear their story. So I didn't take a ton of notes. And part of it was, again, because I just wanted to read it. And the other part was that I didn't think that my normal format for these videos would have fit very well for this book. Sure, I could come on here and do my little video and tell you what the plot is beat for beat, tell you every single thing that happens in this book. But I don't think for this one, it's 100% necessary, and I don't think it would have worked just because of his writing style. It's so unlike anything I've ever read. I would say it's closest to a stream of consciousness, but also not. Let me read you the summary. First, before I can get into this book, I have to tell you about Aristotle and Dante Dive. Nope, that's the second one. Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe. So that book is about two 15-year-old boys who are, they're best friends and they're kind of navigating their life together and eventually develop feelings for one another. And it's specifically told from the main perspective of Aristotle, aka Ari, and how he learns how to come to terms with the fact that he's in love with his best friend Dante and simultaneously make amends with his father, who is a previous Vietnam War vet, and learning how to navigate these relationships, right? Okay. Now, Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. It takes place immediately after the first book, and it goes through their senior year, their last year of high school together. And essentially, there's this one line that consistently comes up in the book, And I think it encompasses a lot of what it's about. And it's the line, learning how to be the cartographers of the world. Essentially, this message, this idea of learning how to map out and navigate this new world that they are discovering together. Because this book also takes place in the 1980s. So this is post-Vietnam War. And, you know, in this time, being gay or identifying with the LGBTQ community was not something that was welcomed, normalized, or really talked about in any way. So they're learning how to navigate things like love, intimacy, emotions that are typically found in like heterosexual relationships, and learning how to navigate all those feelings in a homosexual relationship and in a world that will not accept them. Allow me to read you the summary. In Aristotle and Dante discover the secrets of the universe, two boys in a border town fell in love. Now they must discover what it means to stay in love and build a relationship in a world that seems to challenge their very existence. Ari has spent all of his high school burying who he really is, staying silent and invisible. He expected his senior year to be the same, but something in him cracked open when he fell in love with Dante, and he can't go back. Suddenly, he finds himself reaching out to new friends, standing up to bullies of all kinds, and making his voice heard. And always, there is Dante, dreamy, witty Dante, who can get on Ari's nerves and fill him with desire all at once. The boys are determined to forge a path for themselves in a world that doesn't understand them, but when Ari is faced with a shocking loss, he'll have to fight like never before to create a life that is truthfully, joyfully his own. So now you might be asking yourself, what are we going to talk about in this video? And let me tell you, one theme that I was constantly coming back to when reading both the first book and now the second book is this idea that I'm going to go into now. And maybe you've heard of it. So, and this is specific because Aristotle and Dante are both Mexican. And what is uniquely found in Mexican culture is something that we call machismo. And machismo is, Google says, machismo is a strong or aggressive masculine pride. But it's very specific and very distinct from misogyny in the way that machismo is an idea that's built around like intensified hyper masculinity amongst men specifically. Machismo is like your red pill kind of man, the person that is incredibly misogynistic, but almost to the point where it's violent. And I'm gonna make it very clear that when I'm talking about men who believe in machismo, I am not talking about all men, because of course I can recognize that not every machismo is an extreme, okay? It's not the same as like your run-of-the-mill misogyny. It's not just like ideas that are passed down in the patriarchy. Machismo is something that is so incredibly extreme and something that is often characterized by like borderline violence against women. But I'm not saying that I think every single Hispanic man is machista. I think that like, I'll get more into it in the video, but I think that this idea of like machismo is oftentimes passed down in our culture uniquely. And it takes a conscious effort to try and unlearn the things that we are taught as children and to consciously make an effort to go against these ideas that have been taught to us, okay? I'm gonna give that disclaimer now. The reason that I'm bringing up machismo when I'm talking about this book is because I think that these ideas are communicated in the book, and specifically the solution to how we can unlearn machismo in ourselves and in our lives, okay? Which comes to the title of this video and my overall thesis when I'm talking about this book, which is I think that we as Mexicans, we as a global society should allow boys to have feelings, and most importantly, let boys love. So when I talk about love, and it's specifically examined in this book as 3 different kinds of love, and that is familial love, platonic love, and romantic love. I think love as an emotion is inherently incredibly vulnerable for people. When you love someone, it opens you up to feelings of rejection or feelings of inadequacy, and it like puts you at a position where you're entirely dependent on another person to reciprocate those feelings. And with ideas like machismo, having that vulnerability is weakness, which is why they don't typically express love or allow themselves to be loved. And specifically in heterosexual relationships, For a man to express love to a woman is to be vulnerable because it forces you to essentially wait on the woman to reciprocate those feelings. And if she doesn't, then it makes you seem, I don't know, like vulnerable or fragile. You've opened yourself up to an attack. And that kind of power that you are essentially giving to your partner is something that is not normalized in machismo mentality. It's like the exact opposite of what machistas are like hardwired to believe. So I'll start first with talking about familial love. So in Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, Dante says that he's crazy about his parents. He shows them an incredible amount of love. He even kisses his father on the cheek when they're like talking and when he greets him, right? And notably, Ari says that he doesn't necessarily have this relationship with his family and specifically not his father. And I'm going to focus on familial love when talking about father and son relationships specifically. It's no secret that a father figure is incredibly crucial in the development of boys as they become men, because just universally, your parents are your first introductions to the world. They're what you base a lot of your morals and values on, because they're the people that raise you. They're the people that instill their ideas and their values into you as you're growing up. And this is very important with boys' development because their father figure is who teaches them what it means to be a man. A boy's first interaction with men is with their father figure. So in Ari's case, his father is a Vietnam vet and he is incredibly absent for most of his life because he is dealing with post-traumatic stress disorder and he's still living with that war inside him. So he's not able to be a present and attentive father like Ari is hoping that he would be. And because of that, they have an incredibly strained relationship. But in Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World, we see that his father he's actively making strides to undo any harm that he did to Ari when he was still trying to process his own emotions and trauma. So for most of Ari's crucial development years, he was basing what it means to be a man based on what he was experiencing in the world around him. We know that I won't say he's violent, but he has a tendency to get into physical fights. He's beaten up a lot of people. For most of Ari's development, his communication is based on like physical fights. He doesn't necessarily know how to express his emotions very well. And we see that that's something specifically that his father addresses in this sequel. Ari's dad specifically makes sure that he's very vocal about his support for Ari as coming out as gay and that he's talking about the things that he feels about the world or just like their little family. And he specifically talks about how much love he has for Ari and his mother. Because I think the father figure is incredibly important to a boy's development, again, as I mentioned, because the father will show the son what it means to be a man. And this can take on a variety of different meanings. Ideas like chivalry, how you're supposed to interact with women, understanding consent, even like technical skills like, oh, you should know your way around a car. You should know how to fix the heater, like whatever, handyman kind of things. These are typically the traits that are passed down from a father figure to the son. Something that's not necessarily talked about in Mexican culture is passing down emotional values, teaching sons and teaching children in general how to show the emotions that they are feeling. Because emotional intelligence is something that is incredibly hard to teach once you grow up. It's really hard to be able to communicate your feelings if it's not necessarily instilled in you when you're a kid. I mean, it's something that you can, of course, learn, but it's a lot harder versus when you learn as a kid. So one of the things that I noticed that Ari's dad does specifically is he talks about how much he loves Ari's mother. And Ari picks up on this a lot about the ways both verbally and kind of subliminally, is that the word? Yes. That his father is showing his love and affection for both his son and his mother, which is incredibly important when we talk about the other forms of love, which are platonic love and romantic love. So jumping a little bit forward to platonic love. In this sequel, Ari strengthens his friendships with 3 other girls. That is Gina, Cassandra, and what is her name? Susie. He strengthens his friendships with Gina, Cassandra, and Susie, these girls that have tried to become friends with him since like the last book, and he's just been pushing them away consistently. But we see him grow and nurture these friendships with these girls. Now, with the machismo mentality and a lot of these heteronormative ideas that are passed down in our society, relationships between men and women and interactions between men and women, they're dominated by feelings of romantic or sexual interest. I'm going to say machismo mentality when I talk about like kind of the rules, so quote unquote, when it comes to like living in machismo or having those ideas in your thoughts. Okay, I don't have a better word for it. So the machismo mentality will tell you that relationships between men and women that are platonic do not exist, because a man, no matter like how long he's been friends with a girl, if she says, hey, I'm romantically interested in you, he should pursue that relationship no matter what. A man will always have romantic and or sexual feelings towards a woman, no matter what their relationship is prior. So to have a completely platonic relationship with not one, but 3 other women, I think is something that actively goes against machismo. Because Ari talks about these girls with such affection. He says that Cassandra is beautiful and stunning and she's intelligent. And these are all things that in a different context, we can say that, you know, it's very romantic. He's showing love to her. But in this context with their friendship, we know that he's saying these things not because he feels any kind of like romantic or sexual attraction for her, but he's simply acknowledging all the good qualities that Cassandra has. So I think having these platonic relationships, again, goes against machismo and these machista mentalities that have been passed down to like Hispanic families. And now for the big one, we are going to talk about romantic love in Aristotle and Dante. So I'm gonna first, of course, talk about in machismo, they are entirely, like wholeheartedly against gay relationships. And I think there's this idea that in heterosexual relationships with, again, the machismo mentality, is that the man should always be on top, the woman should be submissive, and the man should have like a demanding or commanding rather presence in that relationship. But if it's a relationship between 2 men, there can't be 2 people on top. And this is because inherently with machismo, they view heterosexual relationships as inherently unequal, where the man is above the woman. But if there's a relationship between 2 men, like there can't be someone on top. The only way that they can really process a homosexual relationship is by one man being more effeminate and the other man being more masculine. Either way, their whole basis of how a relationship works is that one has to be on top and one has to be on the bottom. They can't possibly fathom that a relationship between 2 people should be based on equality. And this is something that is very specific to Aristotle and Dante because they were friends before they started dating. They viewed each other as intellectual equals. There was nothing that put Dante below Ari or Ari below Dante. And even in their relationship, they're still incredibly friendly with each other. They have interactions with each other that aren't like inherently incredibly sexual or romantic. Like they're just hanging out as friends, as equals. So this relationship is essentially the antithesis of what machismo believes when it comes to relationships between men and women. And I think it's incredibly important for this sequel to show that Ari and Dante go through the same struggles as a heterosexual relationship. Specifically that their lives are not necessarily following the same paths. They have their own respective dreams and ideas for what they want their futures to look like. And I think it's incredibly unique in this story because we see their struggles, that they know that this relationship won't last because in the world that they currently live in, of course, they can't get married. They can't even be seen out publicly holding hands with each other. And although I'd like to think that if this book took place in the present day, that they wouldn't necessarily face the same struggles, I know that that's not true. I'm going to reference the end of the book a little bit later, but right now I'm going to get into some other ideas. And I mention all these 3 different kinds of love because it goes back to this core idea that I have, that it's incredibly important for young boys to not only learn how to love, but learn how to be loved, which is an idea that comes up over and over in this story because this sequel is predominantly about Ari and him learning how to accept the love of other people in his life. Ari struggles a lot because he feels that he shouldn't be loved. He feels that he's done something that's irredeemable or that he's like a bad person. But as we know, he's not. He's incredibly kind and he's one that is incredibly willing to fight and stand up for other people, which is why I think it was incredibly important that this story bring up his brother Bernardo, who is incarcerated for murdering a trans woman. I'm going to read off my notes a little bit. Bernardo is the manifestation of shutting out love. He only knows how to hate because he himself feels that he is hated. He thinks that even his own family has abandoned him. That's why when Ari goes to meet him at the prison, he's mad that Ari won't stay and fight with him, because that's all he knows and that's all he thinks he deserves. But as we know, his mom says that Bernardo still has a place in her heart. She doesn't necessarily, of course, she understands and she recognizes that the things that he has done are unforgivable. Absolutely not. And that's why he is serving time for it. But he's still her son. She's not going to defend him or the things that he did, but she's not necessarily going to shut him out of her heart. And this line comes back over and over in the book, and I think it's very beautiful. And it says, I'm going to butcher it because I didn't write it down, but it's some children leave, some children stay, some children never find their way, which is supposed to describe their entire family dynamic, which, his sisters eventually leave in the story. Aristotle stays, and my battery is dead and I'm sweating. So we don't necessarily linger on Bernardo for very long, but I think that he's important to the story because he shows, again, the extreme that he feels that he is hated, so he can only hate. He believes that the world is inherently cruel and that it'll never change. But with Ari, he's in a very unique position where there's people around him that love and support him, and he is actively choosing to live in a world of love. Love as an emotion is inherently vulnerable, and I can recognize that. But I think simultaneously, to love someone is to be vulnerable, as well as allowing yourself to be loved. Because if you allow yourself to be loved by other people, then you also open yourself for these people to hate you, be angry at you, or to reject you. And I think, again, with machismo and this mentality, those kinds of emotions are not ones that they're willing to accept. If they can reject those negative emotions, then they can continue to stay on top. And that's why very normalized in our culture is that men often don't show their emotions. It's too vulnerable. It's seen as fragile, and it's not what a man is supposed to be. But when we don't allow ourselves to be loved, when we don't allow ourselves to love, that's how we condemn ourselves to a life of solitude and exile, which I think oftentimes with having these ideas influenced by machismo, some men might believe that being alone is better than opening yourself to being vulnerable and being hurt, which is not true. And I also want to talk about this other idea, this other line that consistently comes up in the story, where the people around Ari, specifically like the tias and the neighbors of his family, of his neighborhood, will tell him, "When did you become such a man?" And now this, when they say it, they're not saying it to be mean or rude, and they're not saying it in a way that's meant to offend him, but he takes it as like almost sarcastic, where he's like, "Actually, yesterday, when I woke up, I looked in the mirror and I knew I was a man." I think it's incredibly, inherently very harmful to tell young boys that they're becoming a man. And I say that not because I think there's something inherently wrong about being a man, but I think that when you're telling young boys oh, you have to be a man, or grow up, be a man, it robs them of their childhood. It robs them of going through that wonderful period of life where you're still figuring things out. And when you're still a kid, there's nothing wrong with being a kid. And specifically, the reason that they're telling Ari that, oh, you're such a man, is because physically, he's physically grown up and he just is handsome. And that's it. But I think the true marker of when his mom and his sisters view him as an adult, as a man, is when he's the most vulnerable, when he's showing his emotions, when, spoiler. So in the story, Ari's father dies of a heart attack, and it's so incredibly emotional. And I literally cried my eyes out when it happened. His mom has him deliver the eulogy at the funeral, and he is talking so beautifully, not only about his father's impact on society and in their town. He's expressing the emotional impact of having his father in his life and now his father leaving his life. So when they recognize he's a man, it's because he's being vulnerable. He's showing his emotions, and he's not afraid to show his emotions, both his love for his dad, his love for his friends, and his love for Dante. If you ask me, I don't think a man is defined by anything physical, like having a beard or being tall or being chivalrous or being able to fix my car. I think a man is defined by having emotions and not being afraid to show them, which is why I think it's incredibly important that us as the generation that is next to have kids, I think it's incredibly important that we as a generation recognize that we should be able to instill in the younger generation, specifically in the next generation of young boys, that it's okay to show emotion. It's okay to love, and it's okay to be loved. Machismo is not just an issue about women. It's not just a problem with men being violent to women or misogynistic or whatever. It's something that affects not only us, but little boys. The little boys that are growing up right now with their fathers and their older cousins and the other adult men in their life telling them, don't be a girl, don't cry, don't do this. You have to be tough. You have to be this. You have to be that. It's incredibly harmful. It's important that we as a society tell boys that it's okay to feel their emotions the same way that we tell women it's okay to feel theirs. Machismo is a disservice to the young men that are currently growing up right now. Machismo doesn't just teach young boys about misogyny, transphobia, homophobia, and normalizes it in their minds, but it also suppresses them and their growth. To go back to my thesis, my overall message with this video, let boys love. Let them be loved. Show them what it means to love. I don't think it'll be easy. I think right now in our society, in our culture, machismo has been normalized to a point where we feel like it'll never go away. We'll never be able to come back from that. We'll never be able to overcome it. But to that, I'm going to read an excerpt from the last chapter of the book. So this excerpt is from when Ari and Dante are in the Louvre Museum in Paris, and they're looking at the specific painting, which I forget what the name is, but I will read this now. I looked up at the painting, the survivors of a shipwreck, fighting the waves of a storm, struggling to get back to the shore, where life was waiting for them. I knew why I loved that painting. I was on that raft. Dante was on that raft. My mother and Dante's mom and dad and Cassandra and Susie and Gina and Danny and Julio and Mr. Blocker and Miss Livermore and Mrs. Alvidres, they were on that raft too. And those who had died too soon. My dad and my Aunt Ophelia and Cassandra's brother and Emma's son and Rico and Camila, all the lost people that the world had thrown away. Oh my God, I'm like so emotional as a person. Oh my God, this is like the 5th video I've cried in. I need to relax. They were there with us on that raft, and their dreams and desires too. And if the raft collapsed, we would dive into the waters of that stormy sea and swim our way to shore. We had to make it to shore. For Sophocles and all the newly arrived citizens of the world, we had learned that we were all connected and we were stronger than any storm. And we would make it back to the shores of America. And when we arrived, we would throw out the old maps that took us to violent places filled with hate, and the new roads we mapped would take all of us to places and cities we'd never dreamed of. We were the cartographers of the new America. We would map out a new nation. Yes, we were stronger than the storm. We wanted so much to live. We would make it to the shore with or without this ragged, broken raft. We were in this world, and we were going to fight to stay in it, because it was ours. And one day, the word exile would be no more. So, I'm crying, but I think overall, it's important that every day we choose to love and to be loved. Love is such a beautiful thing. Why would anyone choose not to? And another line I wanted to bring up because I highlighted it. So also brought up in this book very frequently is the AIDS epidemic, and how at the time the governments of the world were turning a blind eye to all the people that were suffering from AIDS. When Ari arrives in Paris, he asks his friend, why do we always have to fight? And this is what he says in response. Because we cling to the ways of thinking that don't even qualify as thinking. We don't know how to be free because we don't know how to free those we enslave. We don't even know we're doing anything of the sort. Maybe we think that the value of our own freedom is worth less if everybody else has it. And we're afraid. We're afraid that if someone wants what we have, they're taking something away that belongs to us. And only to us. Machismo is, at its core, incredibly homophobic and transphobic, very against these relationships. Again, for the same reason. Because machistas believe that if gay relationships, gay men, had the same freedoms to love who they loved as straight men, that it takes something away from them. That it affects them personally. It impacts who they believe they are. And I think that's something that they truly believe. They think that being in a relationship, being gay, it's against their very being. And that's why machismo needs to fucking die. It doesn't take anything away from you as a person to simply live in a world with other people who get to love who they want to love. So, with all this being said, that's the end of the book. I didn't talk about a single thing that actually happened, and there was so much that did happen, but this was the video I wanted to make. I wanted to talk about this, so I'm glad that I did. I did cry. I did get emotional. Did you expect any different from me, though? I'm very emotional as a person. I'm very in touch with my emotions, and I'm okay with expressing them. That's it for this video, I think. Thank you so much for watching. I'm emotionally drained, and I need to go to the grocery store, so that's fun. Did you know there's also a movie based off the first book, Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe? I want to watch it so bad, and I wanted to pre-order the DVD, but I missed the deadline, and I was so upset about it. But I think it's streaming, so I'm going to find the movie, and I'm going to watch it, preferably on a day where I'm mentally okay to receive that. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment how many times I made you cry, if I did make you cry. Please read Aristotle and Dante Dive into the Waters of the World. Read Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe if you haven't already. I need to find where my book is, because now I'm kind of nervous that I don't have it. Like, it's not on my bookshelf. And I have a section on my bookshelf that's not in the shot right now, but it's all like my favorite books, and it's not there. So I'm a little nervous about that. Anyway, the next book I will be reading is... hold on. Also, before I forget, we have to take off a trinket from my trinket collection, and that is because someone has come under fire. Someone who was lovingly displayed on my bookshelf has crossed the picket line. They have disobeyed the girl cot of a certain coffee company, and therefore they can no longer be displayed on my bookshelf. Hyunjin has to go. I'll probably be replacing her with someone else. I'm still reeling from that atrocity, but yeah. So with that in mind, let me grab the next book. So the next book that I'll be reading on this channel, hopefully, because I have a lot of books that I'm trying to read in March. I'm crazy, I know. This next book is Brick, Dust, and Bones. I picked this up. I think it's a juvenile fiction. It's very short, so hopefully it won't take me that long. I picked this book up because the cover's so good. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it. I'm sorry I cried so much. I'm not sorry. I'm okay. It's fine if I show my emotions every now and then. Please follow Benjamina Leida Science on Instagram and keep an eye out because he's still coming out with books and stuff. So yeah, he's great. I love him. He's actually my role model. So that's it. Oh my god, I'm crying so much.